Today's topic is cardiac cycle. So the first thing, what is cardiac cycle? Cardiac cycle is nothing but the sequence of event that happens in a single heartbeat. Or you can say the complete contraction and relaxation of a single cardiac muscle. Students, in cardiac, we can say whenever the heart will contract and relax, that is what explained in this cardiac cycle. Okay, whatever the things are happening in one particular heartbeat, that is explained by cardiac cycle. What is the duration of cardiac cycle? So you can say it is 0.8 seconds. 0.8 seconds is the duration of cardiac cycle. Now what is important? Like what makes this particular thing important? Cardiac cycle will tell you how the particular heart will work. The complete working mechanism is explained by the cardiac cycle. Now before entering here, you should now understand few things about the structure of heart. So if you see this thing, here this is the rough diagram of the heart I have drawn. So we all know that heart has 4 chambers and these are certain valves. So 2 auricles will have, 2 ventricles will have, and then this valve which you can see between the auricles and ventricle, this is known as cuspid valve we can say, or AV valve also we can say. And these valves which are present in the ventricle, which will pass the blood from the ventricles inside the pulmonary artery or inside the aorta. Here we have the semilunar valves. Okay. Now with respect to cardiac cycle, you have to understand some special things which is known as nodal tissue. Now, we all know that heart is made up of cardiac muscles, okay? But what is nodal tissue? Nodal tissue is modified cardiac muscle, okay? And why it is so important? Because these nodal tissue have the property of autorhythmicity. It means they can generate their own impulse, they can generate the rhythm, and that is why they are important for us. So, how many types of nodal tissue we have? 4 types. You can see here, this is the first nodal tissue which is present in the right atrium and it is known as sinoatrial node or SAN. Okay. Second nodal tissue we have here in the right atrium and it is known as atrioventricular node. You can see. Okay, atrioventricular node. Now, third which we have here, which is present between the 2 ventricles, this is known as AV bundle. This is known as AV bundle, or you can also say bundle of His. Now further this nodal tissue, you can see this is spreading in case of fiber, in the form of fibers. Now these fibers are nothing but these are known as Purkinje fibers. Okay, these are Purkinje fibers. So 4 nodal tissue we have. One is the sinoatrial node, second is the atrioventricular node, which you can see here. Third is the AV bundle, and fourth is the Purkinje fibers. Now what is important here? See, the conduction, all 4 nodal tissues are independent, they can independently generate the impulse. But the pacemaker of heart is SAN. Why? Because it can generate the maximum number of, you can say, action potential. Maximum number of action potential is generated by SAN. And student, why we are focusing on nodal tissues? Because these nodal tissues will be spreading the conduction in the heart, and this conduction is very important for the contraction of heart. Until and unless the conduction will be spread in a region of heart, that region cannot contract. Why? Because there is a reason. These conduction, when the action potential will spread in the heart, it will open the calcium channels. And then once we get the calcium, then only the heart can contract. Okay? Now there is a direction of the conduction. You can say there is a direction in which the conduction will spread. See, if you see SAN will, you can say generate the action potential which will be coming down from here, and then it will be coming to the AVN. From AVN it will be coming to the bundle of His, and from the bundle of His it will be spreading throughout the ventricles. Okay, as I already told you, the conduction is very important, then only the contraction will happen. Okay, just keep this in your mind, then we can move to the next thing. Acha, before going there, very important thing, as I already told you, these are your cuspid valve and these are your semilunar valves. See, as we all know, ventricles, the wall of ventricle is thick, so for the opening and closing, for the opening of these semilunar valves, you will require a high pressure. But opening of these valves, now we all know the wall of ventricle is thin, so these valves, the opening of these valves will require a less pressure. In less pressure also, these valves can open, but in high pressure, these valves will be opening. Coming directly to the point, that is cardiac cycle. As I already told you, 0.8 second is the duration of cardiac cycle. Now we just need to split this 0.8 second. What actually is happening in this 0.8 seconds, okay? So we should start from this point. Okay, fine. Just to make it clear, you can just see there are certain, here I have written duration and then 2 layers I am making. So the inner layer you can go with the atria. whatever is happening in the auricles, that can be represented by the inner layer. What is happening in the ventricles can be represented in the outer layer. Okay, so the outer layer is going for ventricles, inner layer is going for atria. So some more things we can do. The zigzag I am doing here. So what this zigzag is now? So wherever you can see the zigzag pattern, that is telling you that the systole is happening. Systole is what? Contraction. And wherever you can see the plane area, that is going for diastole, that is relaxation. Okay. Now this 0.1 second, whatever happens here. So from this point we can start. From this point, the very important thing you should understand, student, is at this point 70% blood. 70% blood is already filled. It is already filled in the ventricles. Okay. And here at this point, the sand will generate the impulse. Okay, sinoatrial node will generate the impulse at this point. As soon as the sand will generate the impulse, student, what will happen here? So here atria will contract, or we can say atrial systole will happen here. As soon as I already told you, sand will generate the impulse. That complete impulse will be spreading in both the atria, and that both the atria will be contracting at the same time. Student, this is very important. Both the auricles will contract at the same times. As soon as the atria will contract, both the ventricles will also contract at the same time. Okay. Now, once the sand will generate the impulse, the atria will contract, and here atrial systole will happen. And here what happens? This cuspid valve will open. Cuspid valve which we have, that will open. Okay. Now, cuspid valve will open. Okay, because why? See, student, atria will contract, then the blood will be passed to the ventricles. So for the passing of ventricles, you have to open the gate. Yes or no? So this is what happens here. The sand is generating the impulse. That impulse will completely spread in the auricles, both the auricles, and then they will contract. As they will contract, the pressure will develop in the auricles, which will open the gate. And once the gate will open, that is the cuspid valve will open, the blood will pass in the ventricle. Okay. Now, third important thing is that 30% active filling is done. You can say 30% of the blood will be actively passed in the ventricle in this 0.1 second. So what happens in this 0.1 second? Three things. Sand is generating the impulse, it will be completely spreading in the auricles, then atria will contract. As I already told you, spreading of conduction is important. Atrial systole, which will open the cuspid valve, and the blood will pass to the ventricles. How much blood will pass? So sir, 30% blood. 30% blood will be passed in this 0.1 second. And I already told you, 70% of the blood is already present in the ventricles before this sand will generate the impulse. How that is there, that you will now know soon. Okay. Now after this, what happens in this 0.3 seconds? Okay. If you see properly, student, this inner layer has zigzag pattern. It means here in 0.1 second atria is contracting, but the ventricles are relaxing. Yes or no? And in this 0.3 second, ventricles are contracting, but the atria is relaxing. And in the third phase, both the chambers, you can say all four chambers are relaxed. Okay. Okay. So here we have the atrial systole. Now what happens in this 0.3 second? So actually it is also divided into two parts. So initial part is known as here happens isovolumetric contraction. So the initial part of the 0.3 second is nothing but the isovolumetric contraction. Okay. Now what happens in this case? See, I told you that sand will generate the impulse, and at this point now the ventricles will start contraction. Now if the ventricles has to contract, it means completely the impulse has been spread throughout the ventricles. It means till this point you have an impulse which is spread via Purkinje fiber. Okay. Once the Purkinje fiber will spread the impulse, it means completely ventricles have now the action potential. Now ventricles are free to contract, and 100% blood is already present in the ventricles. See, 70% blood came passively, initially it came, and 30% is coming actively. Why I am telling you active? Why active filling I am telling? Because after contraction of the atria, 30% blood is going. That is why I am telling you this is active filling. Okay. Now isovolumetric contraction is what? See, student, in this 0.3 second, initially the ventricles will do a mild contraction. A slow contraction will happen in the ventricles. Okay. Now in this slow contraction or mild contraction, blood will not be pumped. Blood will not be pumped outside the ventricle. That is why I am telling you the volume of blood in the ventricles will remain the same. That is why it is known as isovolumetric contraction. Okay. Now in this case, what will happen? See, so you can say the ventricular pressure will increase, but slow. You can see a very less ventricular pressure will be there. Now this ventricular pressure will be closing. It will be closing the cuspid valve. See, this initial ventricular pressure will close the cuspid valve, so that if ventricles will strongly contract, the blood should not go again back in the atria. See, the aim is that when the ventricles will contract, the blood should be pushed inside the blood vessels which will carry the blood in the body. So for that, you have to first close the gates. You have to first close the cuspid valve. For closing of the cuspid valve, this initial ventricular pressure is responsible, and there is no blood which is passed outside the ventricles now. Okay, that is why it is known as isovolumetric contraction. Now, when the cuspid valve will close, student, there you will have the first heart sound. The first heart sound which we have, love, is due to the closing of cuspid valve. Okay. Then now the next thing is what? Now this is known as rapid ejection phase. Rapid ejection phase means what? Now ventricles will do a strong contraction. Strongly ventricles will contract and they will pump the blood inside the body. Okay, inside the blood vessels. Okay. Now in this case, the ventricular pressure is more. High ventricular pressure will be there. Now this high ventricular pressure will be opening. Here we will open what? Here we will open cellular valves. Here we will open cellular valve. As I already told you, to open the cellular valves, you will require a high pressure, not a small pressure. So high pressure, why? Because ventricles will now do strong contraction, which will generate a strong pressure inside the ventricles, which will open the cellular valves. And as the cellular valve will open, complete blood will be passing inside the body. Clear? This much is understood? Okay. Now at this point is telling you that the ventricle systole is now end. Now something different is starting. Student, if you see properly in this 0.4 second, all 4 chambers of the heart is relaxed. And that is why this phase, the complete phase, is known as joint diastole. It is known as joint diastole. Why? Because all 4 chambers of the heart is relaxed now. Okay. Now here also some basic thing is there. We can divide some more things. Okay. So initial part of this 0.4 second. See, once just after the ventricular contraction, here at this point you see the ventricular contraction is finished. Now this much part is known as isovolumetric relaxation. Isovolumetric relaxation means what? See, in this case, student, again the volume of the blood in the ventricles will remain the same. Why? I told you rapid ejection phase. In this case, ventricles will contract and the blood will be passed in the body. Let me be very clear. 100% blood is never pumped from the ventricle. Some amount of blood is already present, and that is known as end systolic volume. That is a different topic. Completely ventricles will not pump 100% blood in the body. That is not possible. Some amount of blood is still present in the ventricles. Okay. Now, isovolumetric relaxation means what? Here, the ventricular pressure will fall down. As the contraction will finish, now the ventricular pressure will fall down. Once the ventricular pressure will fall down, once the ventricular pressure will decline, now the semilunar valves which we have, the semilunar valves, these will be closed. It means what will happen here? So semilunar valves will close. And as the semilunar valve will close, you will have the second heart sound, that is dub. So first heart sound is love and second heart sound is dub. Here we will have the second heart sound. Second heart sound. Okay. Second heart sound we will have here. Clear with everyone now? Now what is this particular thing now? Okay, after isovolumetric relaxation, there is some space here. There is again one phase. This is known as rapid filling. Phase. Now what is this rapid filling phase? Student, as you all can see, all 4 chambers are in a relaxed condition. There is no pressure now. You can say pressure in the heart is now less only. In this case, rapid filling phase means what? Now the blood will come passively. See, the only thing happens in rapid filling is that the blood will flow passively inside the ventricles. How much blood will flow? So you should say 70%. 70% blood is filled passively inside the ventricles, and this particular thing happens in the rapid filling phase. Okay, 70% blood will be fast. Once you can see here, okay, when all four chambers will be relaxed, the blood will enter from the vena cava and the pulmonary vein once inside this auricles, both auricles. When the blood will come, that blood, what is coming passively, will exert the pressure on this cuspid valve, and due to that pressure, this cuspid valve will open. So that is why the blood can easily go inside the ventricles without any contraction, and that is what happens in the rapid filling phase. It means without any contraction also 70% blood is filled inside the ventricles. And then again the same cycle will repeat, because we know 30% blood is coming actively, 70% is coming passively, and here at this point the ventricles will pump only when you have 100% ventricular contraction. Okay, this is what, student, is the cardiac cycle.